And now for a special segment on Thursday night AMP, the hardcore Canadian Peter H. and I are going to preview this weekend's big upcoming MMA shows. We have Joe Warren versus LC Davis at Bellator 143 and Josh Barnett versus Roy Nelson for UFC Japan. And I think we're going to start with the latter. So Peter H., take it away.
I don't know what's a bigger news story, me being back on AMP or Josh Barnett fighting in Japan again.
Well, it's not Pride, but it's going to feel a little bit like it with Josh Barnett at Super Saitama Arena.
Roy Nelson, Josh Barnett. I mean, what do you mean to say here? These are two heavyweights that are I'm not going to say they're legendary status, but Barnett's definitely, I don't know, I think he'll be in the Hall of Fame UFC one day, and Nelson's infamous for other reasons.
Well, he is a legitimate UFC heavyweight, even if you think he's infamous for other reasons. He had an incredible run there of like 5 or 6 straight fights where he got a knockout and was in title contention for a while and has had some legendary fights.
I don't know. Sometimes when I see him fight, it's like the Homer Simpson of mixed martial arts.
I don't know. I don't think you can look at him as being Dedrick Tatum's opponent in this fight. You got to take him seriously in any fight.
True. I mean, we talked about this on Glow Up or Shut Up, where if you don't respect someone's power, you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, he has hurt a lot of people with that power. He hurt Czech Congo with it. He hurt Dave Herman with it. He hurt Big Nog with it. This guy has a legitimate shot.
But in Japan, I mean, how can you go against Barnett here?
It's kind of hard to, especially with the run that Barnett has been on lately. He has reinvented himself since his return to UFC. So I think everybody can just write off the Travis Brown fight because Hoppa Brown is a beast. You know, it's not like that was a winnable fight, but at the same time, he beat Frank Mir. His last fight in Strikeforce, he lost to Daniel Cormier, but he went the distance with him. You gotta respect that considering where Cormier is right now.
Well, looking at the rankings, Barnett's number 8 and Nelson's number 11. So a Barnett win here, I could make the case for him jumping ahead of Mark Hunt. Over Ben Rothwell, maybe, and Travis Brown number 5. I mean, yes, Brown hasn't fought in a long time now, but I don't know if you put him ahead of Brown at this point.
No, not with a loss. You can't put him ahead of a guy he lost to.
No. But it would set up an interesting match, though, down the road.
I think there's lots of interesting things you can do with Josh Barnett. And the one thing I really like about this fight for both of these guys is they are fan favorites. They know how to get the stick. They know how to entertain people. Whoever wins this fight is going to make the most of it.
What's that line from WrestleMania 3 about the force and
it's the unstoppable force and the immovable object.
There you go.
These two things are colliding, and it's going to be two gargantuan heavyweights because Josh Barnett's a big boy and Roy Nelson's a big round boy. So it's going to be a fun and slobber knocker of a fight.
If Nelson wins, you think he'll do the Buddha belly thing again?
Of course.
All right, semi-main event, and interesting to see who they put in the same main event. Gegard Mousasi, no problem there, but Uriah Hall.
Yeah, coming back on very short notice here after just having a fight at the Teixeira versus St. Preux card.
So it's short notice, and a win here by Hall would really stamp his place in that division.
I think so. But it's
Mousasi is Mousasi.
Mousasi is the favorite with the odds makers for not just for the fact that it's short notice for him to be coming back, but Hall has just never faced anybody with Mousasi's level of experience, and his track record is pretty legendary. I mean, this guy, we're talking about people who fought in Japan, and we talked about Barnett being a legend in Japan. Well, Mousasi definitely fits that category as well. A lot of dream shows, a lot of just Pride Bushido shows, in general, he's pretty big in Japan, which is why he's on this card.
A win here by Hall definitely puts him in the top 15. I would even say top 12.
Well, that depends on where Mousasi is ranked right now.
Number 6.
Okay, well, it would certainly move Hall up lightning fast in a hurry, but I wouldn't count on it because Mousasi is the minus 470 favorite. Hall is plus 375. Incidentally, in the first fight we talked about, Barnett is minus 270 and Nelson is plus 230.
That's not too bad.
It's closer than I thought it would be.
But, I mean, if he takes someone who's not ranked and beats number 6, that means a few spots in the rankings for sure for him.
Yeah, well, it's a big risk for Hall, so big risk, big reward.
Absolutely. Chico Kamas against Koji Horiguchi in an interesting matchup for both guys where I don't see it going the distance.
No. Horiguchi was having a pretty good run of things before he ran into Demetrius Johnson, and how many people have we said that about? So
everybody.
Yeah, no shame in the fact that he lost, although he did end up unintentionally setting a record for the latest submission ever in a fight with 1 second left to go in the 5th round of a title match. So
could have just taken one more breath and just and hold it. Okay.
If you gotta tap, you gotta tap. If you're in that much pain or you're in that much trouble at going out unconscious, you're gonna tap.
Interesting matchup here again with Takei Mizugaki against George Roop.
Oh, well, you didn't even ask me for the line on the last fight.
Oh, sorry.
That's alright. It's minus 335 for Horiguchi and plus 275 for Kamas, so.
Yeah, Horiguchi, definitely.
Yeah, well, Kamas, he just has too spotty of a track record. It's like loss, win, no contest, loss, win. He's all over the map.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's go on to that next fight, Mizugaki and Roop.
I got Mizugaki winning here by
Absolutely.
Stoppage in the 2nd round, maybe?
Yeah, he's the minus 235. Roop is plus 195. And Roop, I mean, he's an interesting fixture in the bantamweight division because he is basically the Donald Cerrone of that division. He looks way too big to be in it.
Yeah.
But that size does not actually work in his favor. Again, it's like I just said about Chico Kamas. Loss, win, loss, win, loss, win, loss, win. There's no consistency to this guy whatsoever.
Do you consider him a gatekeeper?
I think he's a guy that'll stay employed as long as they need warm bodies. So, yeah, you could call him that.
I like this next one. Diego Brando against Kasunori Kikuno.
Yeah, I believe this fight actually moves up to the main card to replace Matt Hobar and Norifumi Yamamoto.
Yeah, I think you're right on that. And it's good for them to get more exposure on the main card as opposed to the prelims, but I have Brando winning that one.
Yeah, Kikuno got knocked out by Tony Ferguson, though there's no shame in that. A lot of people have been knocked out by Ferguson. But he also got knocked out by Kevin Souza, and his really only major win in UFC, as far as I'm concerned, was choking out Sam Sicilia at the last show in Saitama.
Now, I'm not too familiar with this Road to UFC Japan tournament final. What is that, was it Ultimate Fighter type thing, or?
I would have to assume it is, and I don't know either of these guys. But before you get to that, let me just say that the odds on Kikuno and Brando is minus 230, Kikuno is plus 190. And for this Road to Japan finale, whatever it is, Hirota is minus 235, and Ishihara plus 195.
Anything you want to talk about on the prelims?
I wish I could say I knew more about these guys. Raging Cajun Johnson is the only one that stands out to me.
I like Li Jinglang against Kieta Nakamura.
Mm-hmm.
That one could be good. Johnson Katani could be good. It's prelims, but the thing is, the timing isn't an issue here because it's on Fox Sports 1 on the main card, Fox Sports 2 on the prelims. I believe that would be TSN. Don't quote me on the channels there, but 10 p.m. and 8 p.m. respectively. So, I mean, it doesn't look like they're going to have that. Remember, was it China or Macau where they had 5 a.m. prelims and 8 a.m. main card?
Yeah, Macau was the one that started at 5 in the morning.
Oof. Hopefully they don't do that in the future.
No. But, hey, I will give them props. They've put together a card with some local fan favorites on the prelims and some Gaijin fan favorites on the main card. So it's going to be a very interesting show. It obviously couldn't be done as a pay-per-view due to the time difference and all the other things that went into making this card. But I think this is a solid card for UFC fans. I think this is one casual fans can get into, particularly the main event and the co-main event. I think are excellent fights.
Let's move on to Bellator, another show in Hidalgo, Texas, at the State Farm Arena. Main event is very interesting as L.C. Davis fights Joe Warren.
Yeah, and I would say there are potential bantamweight implications on the line because Warren is the former champion. L.C. Davis had what many people are calling the fight of the year against Hideo Tokoro. So whoever wins this fight could move up into bantamweight contention.
Contention or title shot?
I guess that just depends on where the chips fall after the next bantamweight title defense for Marcos Galvao. And I don't remember off the top of my head who he's scheduled to face next, but it obviously can't be either of these guys because they're in a fight with each other.
No. I'd have him sit in cage side.
That might be what they do. They may have the winner immediately challenge. I don't know what their plans are, but that's why you watch the fights, right? So tune in on Friday night on Spike TV to find out.
Now, Joey Beltran against Kendall Grove. That could be a slobber knocker there, or it could be disappointing.
I don't have high hopes for this one because they're both kind of also rans at this point. I don't know if I'd go so far as to say gatekeepers. I mean, Grove's done a little better of late. He's won 3 out of his last 5, but he's 50-50 in Bellator. So, there's always something with Kendall Grove. Like, he's always got a chance in any fight because he is such a submission wizard, and he's got an amazing skill set. We saw that when he was on The Ultimate Fighter and won it, but he seems like one of those guys who never quite fulfills the promise of his potential, if you know where I'm coming from with that. And Beltran, he's a fun guy. He has exciting fights. He likes to just throw down, but his lack of well-roundedness in his overall game and the fact that he always wants to make it exciting means that he's about 50-50. He wins and he loses and he goes back and forth. It's not something where you can ever feel fully confident in Joey Beltran doing anything big. So these guys are both just kind of middle of the pack right now.
Henry Corrales fights Emmanuel Sanchez in an interesting match. I mean, I'm not going to say, this is why I'm watching the card, but I'm curious to see who wins this one. You know what I mean?
Well, that's a good pick on your part because both of these guys fought and lost to a former featherweight champion in Bellator. Henry Corrales, he had a very tough fight with Daniel Strauss, and Emmanuel Sanchez had a very tough fight with Pat Curran. So both these guys are looking to come back and get a win, and whoever does has the bragging rights. Like, okay, we both lost to a featherweight champion, but I beat you, so I'm closer to a title shot than you are.
Bellator is, this is why I find Bellator a little bit different than everybody else, where they put these matchups where it brings intrigue. Sometimes when you're watching a UFC card and you got 2 guys fighting, you're like, I could care less. But this fight here is something where I'm going to be watching it and thinking, I don't know who I want to cheer for here because both these guys are good. And both these guys are trying to prove themselves right now.
Right, and they both got something to prove after coming off a loss. And one of these guys, potentially, you can look down the road and say, if things continue to go well for the featherweight champion Patricio Freire, he could be facing one of these guys down the road for a title shot. But anyway, Yurtin Teixeira and Vinicius Queiroz, what are your thoughts on that? I'll give you a little background if you need some help.
Yeah.
Well, Yurtin Teixeira is a K1 kickboxer. He won the 2008 K1 Grand Prix in Fukuoka by beating Keijiro Maeda. And he's not very experienced in mixed martial arts. He's 3-0 in the last 3 years, but that's only 3 fights since 2012. So kind of a K1, kind of a kickboxing legend. Remains to be seen what he'll do in mixed martial arts. And Vinicius Queiroz, he's a little more experienced. 10 fights, 7-3 overall. Beat some pretty good guys like LeVar Johnson and Mark Halata. But he's sort of a middle of the pack guy. He never goes on a run where he puts together 2 or 3 fights and you feel like this guy's getting a title shot. So we got to see which Vinicius Queiroz shows up for this fight.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Queiroz, but I have a sneaking feeling it's going to be a split decision.
I'm going to go with Teixeira because they made a really big deal out of signing this guy. They sent out a press release. They let the public know that he was a big deal coming out of K1. It seems to me more often than not, when they hype a guy up, when they sign him, they expect him to win his first fight. Now, I know that doesn't always play out. It didn't work out with the young assassin Melvin Gillard, but he did break his hand in that fight, so maybe we can cut him some slack for that.
True. Hand was pretty busted up there.
Right. So I'm going with Teixeira. You're going with Carraz. I don't know if you gave picks on these other fights. For the featherweight fight, I'm going with Sanchez. Who you got in that one?
I'll go with Corrales.
All right. For the middleweight fight, Beltran and Grove, who do you got in that one?
Beltran.
I'll go with Grove by submission.
And I'm going with Davis.
I don't know. That's a tough one to call because, you know, Joe Warren's really close to getting back to a title shot at this point. But LC Davis, again, I really encourage people. I go out of your way to see the Hideo Tokoro fight if you didn't see it, because that was an amazing, spectacular performance by both fighters. But if you're gonna put me on the spot and I can only pick one, I guess, man, I hate being put on the spot sometimes, but I'm gonna go with LC Davis.
Alright, what about the prelim fight? The main event is Nick Gonzalez against Ryan Couture.
I've got Ryan Couture in that one, hands down.
Yeah, I think it'd be not a cakewalk, but it's going to be a good way for him to showcase his skills.
It's definitely not a cakewalk. I mean, he's fighting a guy who's had 30 fights. The bad news is he's like 18-12 in those 30 fights, so not a sterling record. So this is a winnable fight for Couture.
Alright, so that's the UFC card in Japan and the Bellator show in Texas.
Absolutely. Thanks, Peter. Thanks for coming back to AMP.
No problem.